Jambalaya is one of the first dishes I remember having in a restaurant as a child. It was especially memorable because it was the first time I'd ever sent a dish back to the kitchen as being inedible. Naturally, the adults thought it was too spicy for a child, but that wasn't the problem. Being a rather strange child, I occasionally flashed back to that incident for many years, and I relived the flavor in my mind and struggled with the language for how to describe what I felt had made it so unappetizing. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it. It looks like the sort of dish that you could reheat 3 days later, as I often suggest people to do with other dishes I make, but this does not work with jambalaya. You're going to want to begin by getting your ingredients arranged, mise en place, as it's called. We have onions, the chopped serrano or jalapeno chili, garlic that's been cut into fairly large pieces. Don't mince it. Celery. Now, with the celery and both the red bell pepper and the ham, this time it's actually important to do some precision knife work. Don't have the pieces like all completely different sizes. It won't look good in the end. It'll look like amateur. Take some time, make them nice and even. We have the large raw shrimp. We also have baby shrimp here that are the frozen cooked ones. We have 140 grams of sausage, 140 grams of raw chicken breast that's been cut up, and the shrimp. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle on here on both the chicken and the shrimp. I'm going to pre-season these a little bit with some crushed red pepper flakes and garlic powder and salt, and give these a little stir in a minute, and let those just sit there in the refrigerator until we're ready for them, and we'll get everything else cooking right now. I have a pan that's heating up here. I put a couple tablespoons of oil in it. Let the oil get hot. I'm going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of smoked Spanish paprika to this. It's not too hot yet, which is good because you don't want to burn the paprika. You want to toast it, but you don't want to burn it. So this, by putting it in before the oil gets too hot, gives you an opportunity to tell how hot the oil is just by looking at it and seeing how much activity there is here. Okay. Now I'm going to add the diced Canadian bacon. Yeah, I know it's not traditional for this sort of dish, but this is going to work really well. This is going to give it a nice balanced flavor. One of the problems I find personally with jambalaya is that they're often very unbalanced, very poorly balanced dish. This is not going to be that way. This is going to be nice. Okay, after about 3 minutes, this Canadian bacon has got some little bit of color on it. It's hard to tell in the video here. You can tell though that it's cooked and the aroma has changed. The aroma doesn't smell like raw smoked paprika anymore, and it's starting to pick up the aromas of that Canadian bacon in there instead. Now we're going to add the red bell pepper to this. This is 70 to 80 grams of red bell pepper. Also, then the diced onion, also about 70 grams, about 1 ounce of celery. And we're going to cook this for a couple more minutes, maybe 3-4 minutes like this. It's looking good. The aroma is nice. It's not overwhelmingly smoky with the paprika like you sometimes get. I'm going to add the diced serrano or jalapeno pepper. I'm going to add the garlic now, and I'm going to add 2 canned Italian tomatoes. I'm just going to squeeze into this. These are just straight tomatoes. There's no preservatives or anything. San Marzano tomatoes. We're going to cook this down some more. Okay, after like about 3-4 minutes, it starts to dry out a little bit. Now we're going to add the rice to it. The ratio here is interesting. It's the same amount of rice, 140 grams in this case, as there is raw chicken, as there is raw shrimp, as there is sausage. And it's twice as much as the onions, the bell pepper, some of the other ingredients. And the ratios here are what make this work, why it's balanced in the end. So we're going to try to toast this rice a little bit, make it pick up the flavors from the vegetables that are cooking here. Because this is relatively dry, this is going to start wanting to stick to the bottom of the pan and burning. You actually want a little bit of that because this is some of your flavor, these deep, dark caramelized flavors. But you can't have too much or it'll go to burnt. So I'm going to let a little bit of that develop. Then I'm going to moisten it with some white wine, about an ounce and a half of white wine. Scrape off the bottom, deglaze it, let the alcohol burn off. In a minute we're going to add the chicken stock to it. I'm using a homemade chicken stock. You can use the Nord gel pack type that's dissolved in hot water if you want. Obviously homemade, always the best. You want the sense that you made it completely yourself. Now I added the chicken stock to this. And I'm scraping the bottom to pick up the rest of that fond. And this is pretty good now. Let this come to a boil for a few minutes. Now chicken stock is in. I'm going to add the bay shrimp to it. I'm turning the heat down to medium now. It's been on medium high. It's been on 7 out of 1 to 10. It's going down to 5 now. And I'm going to let it sit like this, come to a slow boil, slow simmer, and let it cook for just a little bit before we proceed any further. After about 10 minutes, when the rice is mostly cooked, you can tell by tasting it, you can still feel some resistance in the grains, but it's mostly cooked. You can add the rest of the water of this cooked smoked sausage. Stir this around, put a lid on it and keep it at a very low simmer. Now I'm reduced the heat to 2 on 1 to 10, and I'm going to let it simmer for a while. Okay, and after 20 to 30 minutes, now we're going to put the raw chicken in this. You don't want to put this in earlier, the chicken will get very tough. The shrimp, the raw shrimp are still to add. Those go the very last because those will cook the fastest. So we're going to put this in among this kind of goopy mixture here and let it cook for about 8 minutes. Okay, it's been 8 minutes. I'm going to add the raw shrimp in now. It's the last addition, along with, of course, the Tabasco. You know, it just wouldn't be something from Louisiana without some Tabasco in it. And of course, how much Tabasco you want depends on how hot you want it, but definitely put some in. Put a teaspoon in at least. In it. It's supposed to be a hot dish. Okay. Now, I'm actually going to kill the heat here and let the residual heat cook these shrimp and also finish the chicken. If this is too thick for your tastes, you can add a little bit of water to it at the end, but I'm just going to let this sit for 3 or 4 minutes just to finish the shrimp with a lid on it, and then we'll play. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.